#SilentHero. The street fell silent so suddenly it was as if someone had muted the world. One moment, there was chaos, jeers, a woman's frightened voice, the thud of a dropped bag; the next, nothing but the sound of labored breathing and the distant wail of a siren. That's what happens when four young men who think they own the sidewalk suddenly realize they don't. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about Ray Donovan, a man who never intended to be a hero that Wednesday afternoon. Ray adjusted the grocery bags in his arms as he walked down Maple Street, mentally checking his to-do list before picking up his daughter from basketball practice. At 42, the lines around his eyes had deepened since his wife's passing 3 years ago, each one a testament to both grief and the smiles he forced for his daughter's sake. Single parenthood had taught him efficiency, grocery shopping during his lunch break, answering emails while waiting at doctor's appointments, learning to braid hair by watching YouTube tutorials at midnight. He was lost in thought about whether he'd remembered to defrost the chicken for dinner when he heard them, four young men, probably in their early 20s, surrounding a woman at the bus stop. She was pressed against the shelter, clutching her purse to her chest, eyes darting for escape as they closed in, commenting on her appearance, asking for her number, telling her to smile. "Come on, baby, we're just being friendly," one said, blocking her path when she tried to step away. Ray saw her face, the carefully controlled fear, the calculation of risk that every woman learns too young. He recognized it instantly. It was the same look his late wife had described feeling when walking alone at night, the same concern that kept him awake worrying about his 13-year-old daughter's future. Something inside Ray shifted. The weight of the grocery bags suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the weight of the moment. "Excuse me," Ray said, his voice calmer than he felt. "I believe the lady would like you to step back." The tallest of the group turned, amused at the interruption. "Mind your business, old man. We're just talking here." Ray set his grocery bags down carefully on the sidewalk. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his hands were steady. He hadn't been in a fight since 10th grade, and he didn't particularly want to be in one now. But some lines couldn't be crossed. "That's the thing," Ray replied, stepping closer. "When someone's clearly uncomfortable, it becomes everyone's business." The woman's eyes met Ray's, gratitude and worry mingling in equal measure. She didn't want him hurt on her account, but she also desperately wanted help. The young men exchanged glances, sizing Ray up. He wasn't particularly imposing in his office clothes and sensible shoes, but there was something in his stance that gave them pause, the resolve of someone who had already faced the worst life could offer and had nothing left to fear. "You her dad or something?" another one sneered, trying to maintain bravado. "No," Ray said simply. "I'm someone who's teaching his daughter that good people don't stand by when others are being harassed. I'm someone who promised his late wife that he'd try to make the world a little safer. And right now, I'm someone asking you, politely, to walk away." There must have been something in his voice, the quiet certainty, the underlying steel, because the street went silent. Even the traffic seemed to pause. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Then the woman straightened, finding courage in Ray's calm presence. "I've asked you 4 times to leave me alone," she said, her voice stronger now. "This is the 5th. A bus rounded the corner, its hydraulic brakes hissing as it approached the stop. The young men looked at each other, calculating the changing odds, the disappearing advantage of isolation. "Whatever," the tall one muttered, backing away. "Crazy bitch wasn't worth it anyway." Ray's jaw tightened at the insult, but he remained still as they swaggered off, their retreat disguised as disinterest. Only when they turned the corner did his shoulders relax. "Thank you," the woman said, releasing the death grip on her purse. "I'm Melissa." "Ray," he replied, retrieving his groceries. "Are you okay?" She nodded, then surprised him by adding, "I'm a kindergarten teacher. I deal with behavior issues all day, but somehow it's different when," she gestured vaguely at the street. "When they're not 5 years old and you're not in a classroom," Ray finished for her. Melissa laughed, a small, shaky sound that nevertheless signaled the release of tension. Exactly. The bus doors opened with a pneumatic sigh. "That's me," she said, then hesitated. "What you said about your daughter, you're teaching her well." Ray thought of his Zoe, fierce and kind, who had started a petition at school when a classmate was bullied. "Actually, sometimes I think she's teaching me." As Melissa boarded her bus, Ray checked his watch. He was running late now, but it was worth it. When he picked up Zoe 20 minutes later, apologizing for his tardiness, he debated whether to tell her what happened. Would it frighten her to know about the harassment, or empower her to know someone had intervened? "Dad, your ice cream is melting," Zoe pointed out as they walked to the car. Ray looked down at the grocery bags. Sure enough, there was a small puddle forming at the bottom of one. "I got held up helping someone," he said finally, deciding on honesty. "Like a work emergency?" she asked, already reaching for her phone to check social media. "No. I saw someone being harassed at a bus stop." He described what happened as they drove home, careful to emphasize that the situation resolved peacefully. He expected questions or concerns. Instead, Zoe was quiet for a long moment, then said, "That's why you're always late, isn't it?" "What do you mean?" "You're always stopping to help people. Last week it was that old guy whose car wouldn't start. Before that, it was the neighbors moving boxes. Mom used to say you couldn't pass someone struggling without offering a hand." Ray felt a lump in his throat at the mention of his wife. "Your mom was the same way." "I know," Zoe said softly. "I remember." When they arrived home, Ray was surprised to find Melissa waiting on their porch with a woman in a police uniform. "I hope you don't mind," Melissa explained. "After I calmed down, I realized I should report what happened. When I described you to Officer Chen, she knew exactly who you were." Officer Chen smiled. "Ray's daughter and my son are in the same class. I recognize the description of tall guy with kind eyes who looks permanently worried." Ray felt his face warm. "I don't always look worried." "Yes, you do," Zoe confirmed, unlocking the front door. Over the next hour, Ray gave his statement while Zoe insisted on serving everyone lemonade like they were hosting a proper gathering. When the women finally left, Ray turned to find his daughter watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," she shrugged. "I was just thinking that Mom would be really proud of you. Not just for today, but for everything since she's been gone." Ray felt the familiar ache that accompanied any mention of his wife, but it was tempered by a new warmth. "I'm the one who's proud of you. Every single day." Later that night, after Zoe had gone to bed, Ray sat on the porch thinking about the day's events. He'd acted on instinct, without considering personal risk. It wasn't bravery so much as necessity, the same way he'd learned to be both mother and father to Zoe, to keep breathing when grief threatened to suffocate him, to find joy again when it seemed impossible. The following week, he was surprised to receive an email from Melissa. Her kindergarten class had been discussing community helpers, and she wondered if Ray would come speak to them about the importance of standing up for others. He agreed, though he felt strange being held up as any kind of example. The day of the classroom visit, he felt ridiculously nervous, more so than he had facing down 4 aggressive young men. Zoe helped him pick out his clothes, insisting that kindergartners appreciated bright colors. "Remember when you took me to career day and wore that tie with the tiny dinosaurs?" she asked, fishing it out of his drawer. "Kids notice that stuff." The class visit went better than he expected. The children sat cross-legged on a colorful rug, looking up at him with solemn expressions as he explained in simple terms how sometimes people need help even if they don't ask for it. One little girl raised her hand to inform him very seriously that her mom said never to talk to strangers, which led to a thoughtful discussion about the complicated balance of safety and compassion. As the weeks passed, Ray found himself becoming more involved in his community. He volunteered for a neighborhood watch program, then helped organize a bystander intervention workshop at the community center. Officer Chen assisted with the training, teaching people how to safely defuse tense situations. 6 months after the incident at the bus stop, Ray was leaving a coffee shop when he literally bumped into someone, causing them to drop their drink. "I'm so sorry," he began, already reaching for his wallet to replace it, when he looked up into a familiar face. "Ray?" Melissa smiled in recognition. This time when they talked, there was no fear, no rush of adrenaline, just two people connecting over shared experiences and discovering common ground. They exchanged numbers with the promise of continuing their conversation soon. That evening, as Ray prepared dinner, Zoe observed him with suspicious precision. "You're humming," she noted. "You only hum when something good happens." "I ran into Melissa today, the kindergarten teacher," he explained, trying to sound casual. "And?" Zoe prompted. "And nothing. We're having coffee next week." Zoe's face broke into a wide smile. "Like a date?" "Like two adults having a conversation," Ray corrected, though he couldn't help returning her smile. "Mom would approve," Zoe said confidently, stealing a carrot from the cutting board. Ray paused, knife in hand. "You think so?" "I know so. She made me promise to make sure you didn't spend your life alone. It was our secret pact when she was sick." The revelation knocked the breath from Ray's lungs. "She never told me that." "Because you would have argued," Zoe said with the devastating accuracy of a child who knew her parent too well. "You would have said you'd be fine with just me." "I am fine with just you," Ray insisted. "I know, Dad. But being fine isn't the same as being happy." Over coffee the following week, Ray found himself telling Melissa about this conversation. He hadn't intended to be so open, but there was something about her that made sharing feel natural. "Your daughter sounds wise beyond her years," Melissa said. "She had to grow up too fast," Ray admitted. "I've tried to protect her from that, but some lessons can't be avoided." "Maybe those are the most important ones," Melissa suggested. "The ones that teach us compassion and courage." As they talked, Ray realized something profound. That day at the bus stop hadn't just been about protecting Melissa. It had been about honoring his wife's memory, teaching his daughter by example, and perhaps most surprisingly, finding his way back to himself. One moment of choosing to act, of refusing to look away when it would have been easier, had created ripples that continued to spread outward in ways he never could have anticipated. We all face moments that define us, crossroads where we must decide what kind of person we want to be. For Ray Donovan, a routine Wednesday afternoon had become such a moment, transforming a quiet, grieving single father into someone who remembered how to make the world a little better, one small brave act at a time. And perhaps that's the truest definition of a hero, not someone who does extraordinary things, but someone who does ordinary things with extraordinary heart. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter, stories about everyday courage, compassion, and the difference one person can make. Remember, the most powerful changes often begin with the simplest actions. What will your moment be?